All right, everyone, this is Nathan Lindorf with the Rational Independent. Welcome back. This is part 4 of Jeffrey Toobin being interviewed on the Patrick Bet David podcast, talking about a variety of things, but as Jeffrey Toobin is a political and legal commentator on CNN primarily, we're discussing 2024 election chances, candidates, decisions made by various parties, and we're getting into a little bit of historical drama, particularly as ties to Hillary Clinton in 2016 and the potential double standard there is in the media between, and frankly, in the criminal justice system, between the way the left and the right politicians are treated vis-a-vis Trump's indictments, particularly in Florida, over classified handling. Ooh, it's a mouthful. All right, let's jump in.
Not forget about it, but it's just not, I don't think it's relevant to who you're going to vote for in 2024, how you felt about Hillary Clinton's,
Jeffrey,
emails.
I'm going to interject here for a second, because I think that's being a little dismissive, because you know how you said facts don't care about your feelings, opinions. What Vinny's trying to convey, he's basically a mouthpiece of millions of people who feel that way. Whether he's right or wrong, good luck convincing somebody not to feel a way. So what I think, and I'm not saying that I'm coming at you like you're the tip of the spear for the DNC or anything like that, but use Vinny as a metaphor for freaking millions, tens of millions of America who feel that way, who's basically saying, what the fuck is going on here? It seems like there's two completely different justice systems. And dude, I'm as moderate as it comes. I'll go left, I'll go right, I'm down to party. But there's so many people on the right.
But by the way, this is coming from a guy that has never voted for a Republican president.
Ever.
So he's saying that. So what I would say is the following. Here's what I would say with what he said. By the way, the climate change thing that you said, that people are worried about climate change. Greta Thunberg, 5 years ago, today,
June 21st, she said that because of if we don't stop fossil fuels, today was the doomsday. Today, this was her anniversary.
I just hope we make it through today, by the way.
Can we die?
Climate change scientist is warning that climate change will
So we could die today, is what you're
wipe out
saying.
of all of humanity unless we stop fossil fuels over the next 5 years. Okay.
So the climate change bugbear is one of the things I like to tease and torment, because it's frankly ridiculous. And perhaps we'll dig into that and dive into climate change a little bit in another video that's more on topic. But looks like PBD's producers found a fun thread. And this is the interesting thing. So we've been talking a little bit about the structure of conversations and who's controlling the conversation. And there is certainly, if you want to get good guests and have them happy to be there, you have to be mindful of the power imbalance, particularly if you're running a podcast, a well-produced podcast, where you might have access to producers or researchers who can bring up quotes and tidbits and facts, and your guests can't. Your guest is there to speak. They don't have their own production crew there. You do. It's your show. And so I was commenting a few minutes ago how Jeffrey Toobin had kind of, in this verbal fencing with Vinny, had decided to take the conversation back to hit his talking points, the things that he wanted to address. One of which was climate change. And I called it out at the time because there was no context for it in the conversation. First, it had been brought up. So it's clear that he wanted to talk about it. And not very substantive, but certainly entertaining, that apparently the day that this is broadcast is the exact day that 5 years ago Greta Thunberg said, hey, we've got 5 years left, and if we don't fix things, then we're all gonna die. All right, anyway, I bring that up to say, PBD does a pretty good job giving his guests room to run. I think he's kind of riding that line between, all right, we want to give you a counterpoint to what you said about the climate change thing, but maybe don't push it too hard. I don't know. I've seen it go badly, where a guest reacts badly if they're getting kind of fact-checked in real time, especially since there is a bit of that power imbalance. But I don't think it goes that route. Let's see.
I got up and shaved and everything.
June 2018.
Well, this is what happens when you listen to a 13-year-old.
She was 15 at the time.
But by the way, this is not about what happens when you listen to a 15-year-old. You chose to put this person as a spokesperson and use him as a person of influence to get younger people, and she was very influential. Trust me, this girl's got more influence than most people even believe she does.
I'm not downplaying her
by the way,
influence.
but she's not. I mean, look. It's what she's saying. Is not that it will that on 5 years from now humanity will cease to exist. It's that eventually, and if you look at the melting of the polar ice caps, the melting of Greenland, the melting, the rising of the seas, that's not an unreasonable prediction. That's not an unreasonable prediction at all.
You really believe that?
He's holding the line. Climate change is the thing. Greta Thunberg is credible. Here's the one thing. It's a well-written tweet. He makes a good point. That the tweet actually says, if we don't phase out fossil fuels in the next 5 years, eventually we're all going to die. Okay? It doesn't say we're all going to die in 5 years. Because people who make that kind of prediction don't want to be so easily discredited. So if you look at the exact wording, and again, lawyers are taught to consider the exact wording and to argue that. So he's sticking to it, sticking to his guns for whatever reason.
That climate change is going to affect.
I think climate. It obviously affects.
You don't think climate change is going to affect? I mean, here we are sitting in South Florida. You don't think the rising seas is going to affect Miami?
Climate change is. Okay, so do you want to have the climate change debate? Let's finish this and then we can touch on climate change.
And this is a good point because, again, his guest brings up the issue. He offers kind of a humorous counterpoint. Someone says, don't listen to a 13-year-old. And he says, no, in reality, regardless of how old she is, the DNC, the climate movement, the left, generally speaking, held Greta Thunberg up as a credible spokesperson. So, okay, you held her up as a spokesperson. That means you're kind of hoisted on your own petard. This is your expert. And Jeffrey Toobin doubles down and says, no, this is a real, this is a real issue. This is definitely something that is very important. And PBD basically says, all right, it's like a choose your own adventure. We can keep going with what we've been talking about, or we can veer into climate change. But it's the sort of topic you have to either just glance and move on, or you have to just dive in. So let's see where it goes.
I don't want to get into something. I'm not a specialist in that field.
But what you...
I'm only laughing because the last video we did was Neil deGrasse Tyson. And the first thing that he said was, we can talk about vaccines, but I'm not a specialist in that field. And here, Jeffrey Toobin, I don't want to talk about climate change. I'm not a specialist in that field. And this goes back to kind of that broader dichotomy between, do you trust in the experts over your own judgment, or do you trust your own judgment? That's kind of the two ideological camps in America. There's a group of people that say we should trust the experts. And frankly speaking, specialization is valuable. So if you're a specialist expert, Jeffrey Toobin on the law and politics, or Neil deGrasse Tyson in astrophysics, I think, then you have training and you have some expertise, but you're not an expert in whatever the topic of the day is. However, PBD, at his heart, he's a businessman, and he approaches these issues with kind of a certain pragmatism, and that makes him very fair in his dealings, and I think that makes him very approachable, explains a lot of his success. But if you look at it, fundamentally, he's approaching it as a layperson. This is not his area of expertise. But as a man in business dealing with the market, he engages with people as people. He must rely on his own judgment and his own intuition, his own wisdom in order to be successful in business. So he falls into that camp of individuals should trust their own judgment. Yes, expertise has value, but not at the expense of your own judgment. And that's actually one of the reasons why I started these videos, because I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert in any of these topics. I just pay attention. But the simple truth is, as an American citizen, I have a responsibility to develop as keen of an argument as I can, as clear of an understanding as I can, and to put forth my positions to the best of my persuasive ability, regardless or without being able to rely on, I'm an authority in this topic, so I'm going to talk about it because that's where my expertise is. We are not subjects to an authoritarian expertise regime. We are citizens who manage our own lives and our own families and all participate in the free marketplace of ideas. That's one of my foundational beliefs. But let's dive in and see where they go next.
You brought it up, so let's talk about it. We can talk about it as none of us being specialists. Nobody here is an expert, so whoever gets it, we can all get it wrong. But let me go back to the point about the future thing, okay? I agree with them partly. Let me explain to you why. You remember how the whole thing is like, they stole the election, they stole the election, they stole the election. You know who's the first person that said that? Hillary Clinton.
100%.
She kept saying, they stole the election, Russia, they stole the election, but nobody said anything. The more she went and the more she did that, the more she looked like a victim. I couldn't stand it when you're a sore loser and you lose and you can't do it. You know who did it next? Trump did it.
100%.
Okay, and guess what? You're living what? They stole the election, they stole the election. Whether they did or not, either side, voters want you to say, we lost, let's move on. Okay?
100%.
Left, right, middle, it doesn't matter. Let's move on. However, hey, for those that believe there may have been meddling in the election, et cetera, here's what we have to do. The solution is don't vote by yourself, go with twos, go with three.
He's incorporating Jeffrey Toobin's argument and not co-opting it, but presenting it again in a way that I think they can find agreement, which is, yes, presidential elections in America tend to be forward-thinking. Nobody wins based on, look at my list of grievances, therefore vote for me. We've been wronged, therefore put me in the presidency. It just doesn't work, historically speaking. And probably, if it does start working, we're probably toast. So he's right, it is forward-thinking. And what PBD is saying, and this is where I think it's important to be able to draw fine distinctions, is I agree wholeheartedly. We have to move on. The narrative of the 2020 election was stolen is not a politically motivating factor to win in 2024, whether or not it's factually true. However, if you ignore cheating, if you ignore the threats to the integrity of the election system, then you lose, then your democracy, your democratic republic, whatever you want to call it, loses all credibility. People don't trust it. It becomes a sham. And the confidence in the process is shattered. So if you want to have a functioning United States election process, if you want this to work, you have to, both sides have to simultaneously say 2020, done and dusted. But these are some of the things, the vulnerabilities that we see in the process that we're going to improve in the future. Everyone wants the American people to have confidence in this process, so everyone agrees these are improvements we should make in the process to increase confidence. Look at Florida. In 2000, they had the travesty of recounts and fighting and bickering back and forth. The election hangs in the balance and it's down to the barest of margin. And so you have this incredible national scrutiny on the municipal voting process of some pretty small counties, small areas. These are not heavy hitters, but everything's resting on their process. And it was not great. It was not a good look for America. Look at it in 12, 14 years, 16 years later. They're the first to report results. They are solid and accurate. They don't shift. Their process is locked down. Now, whether or not you like the results, it's shifted pretty far red. You have to admit that their process is impressive. It's very smooth. Now, should we take some of those improvements and maybe generalize them? Take the laboratory of democracy and say, oh, that state's doing it pretty well. Let's adopt some of those practices. I think that's a good idea. I think that improves and increases confidence. And that's a forward-looking way of saying, you didn't like how the last one worked? Help me improve the next one. And I would even argue to say, if you're looking to spot people who are acting in bad faith, if they say, no, everything is fine, Don't ever question the vaccine. Don't ever question the elections. Don't ever question anything that we do. Everything's fine. If you question it, you're threatening it. Then you're trying to be sneaky. You're trying to you're trying to get away with something. That's the signal that I get when you say, no, this is above reproach. You can't challenge this. You can't improve this. This needs to stay the way that it was.
He's going for. Give me the solution, because that's now moving forward, right? Here's where we want to go. So that part I agree with him is future. Obama sold the campaign in 2008, future. Clinton sold future. Kennedy sold future. Reagan sold future, right?
Yeah.
And even Trump sold future in 2016 when he won. Let's make America great again, and let's make this. It's the future. Okay. Trump's campaign started sloppy because he wasn't selling the future. He was selling the past. All right. Having said that, there is a part of me that, I want to know. Like, for example, this whole thing about who cares where COVID came from. I'm sorry, what? I want to know where COVID came from. Do you care? Who cares? Like, I remember one time Hillary Clinton was asking, who cares? They're dead. They're no longer.
Oh, yeah. Why does it matter? What does it matter about Benghazi?
What?
Oh, my God.
What do you mean, who cares? That's the camp, left or right. That's the camp that says, who cares? We're already past this. No. Listen, COVID ruined a lot of people's life.
This is a layman's perspective, a businessman's perspective on politics. You have to do this in business if you're going to survive. If you make a mistake, you have to go back and pick it apart and do a whole post-mortem on it and figure out how that mistake was allowed to happen so it doesn't happen again in the future. Because if you don't, you run out of money, you go out of business, your business dies. In the public sector, you don't have to be so picky because you effectively have endless money. So you have the ability to absorb mistakes. So you don't have to be so critical. But this is a rational, measured response that says, hey, when we have a crisis, we need to understand what caused that crisis. If we have whether it's a crisis of confidence in the election system, whether it's a busted up process, whether it's a once in a century pandemic, we should know as much as possible by clear thinking, rational analysis about how that happened to try and find a way to help us not happen it again. Anyone who says we shouldn't go through that kind of analysis, again, makes me feel like you're trying to get away with something. Makes you feel like you don't really want things investigated because some tricky stuff happened. If you're not hiding anything, you should be an enthusiastic proponent for that kind of investigation. That's my 2 cents.
The leading surgeon, what do you call it? The Surgeon General came out and said, hey, here's what we learned about COVID, is that these shutdowns led to people needing to be around each other and why it's so important to be around each other. Wait a minute. You just realized the Zoom concept didn't work working remotely, that we need to be around each other because we need each other's company? We're just starting to realize that? Now we're just starting to realize how this affected kids? No. We can't say, who cares? We have to go back and find out what happened to prevent it from happening again. And if China did it, they have to be held accountable. And now we know the first 3 cases were the doctors that were out of China. Wuhan, that came out. That's not even something that's being debated about. It's public information that they're talking about now. We have to find that out, okay? And we have to find out whether Fauci was involved with different cases. Was he, gain function? Were they doing that? Were they not doing that? Was he involved with this? Who was funding it? Where did the money come from? People want to know. There's a reason why. Like, think about messages that go viral. For example, what did we learn midterms? Republicans screwed up royally, not a little bit, royally. They screwed up with abortion. You're 100% right. No one's disagreeing with that. But watch this here.
I agree with what he's saying, so I haven't really paused it, but I want to just point out one thing. There is, and again, the ability to draw a fine distinction. There is a fine distinction here that should be pointed out. Pointing out that Republicans screwed up with their political calculation of how the issue of abortion as a politically driven issue is different than making a judgment on whether or not abortion, the act, is morally right or wrong. And he's commenting on the political process. Sorry, kind of a funny freeze frame. He's describing the political calculation the Republican Party made they clearly miscalculated where the American people were at on that question politically, and their messaging was not effective. That is not a comment on whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing to allow abortions to happen in America. Two separate points, worth the distinction.
It's RFK, Robert F. Kennedy. He lost his father and he lost his uncle. Two people that were loved and admired, probably by both sides. Establishment didn't like those guys. The establishment couldn't stand the Kennedy family at all because they were going up against the establishment. They couldn't stand those guys. So, all right, can you go on Amazon and type in Robert Kennedy Jr.? If you can just go on Robert Kennedy Jr. I think nobody wanted to publish this book through anybody. Go to the Anthony Fauci one.
I read that. It was a great book.
Okay,
Scary.
So zoom in a little bit. It's number 4 this week. This thing.
I've never read it. I do mostly audiobooks, but maybe I'll give it a try. So this is something by, so RFK is running for president on the Democrat side. He's angling. We'll see how that goes. 25,000 rating, 4.8 stars. Clearly readers love it. Let's see what he wants to talk about.
It was written 2 years ago. It's got 23,000 reviews, over 1 million copies sold. And who published it? Go to the bottom. Go to the bottom. Go to the bottom. Go to the bottom. Let's see who published it. Go to the bottom. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Oh my God. Okay, so right there. Zoom
terms
in.
of agreement on Instagram.
Skyhorse Publishing.
Yeah.
Who is Skyhorse Publishing? Go Google who Skyhorse is.
No, they publish a lot of books that other publishers won't.
Don't.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's kind of like a.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So Skyhorse Publishing picks some of the guys that people don't want to publish. So then the question becomes, why did the book do so well? Why did it sell so many copies?
And the question behind that question, why pass on a book that was clearly so commercially viable? Why did they have to go to this alternate publishing company no one's ever heard of in order to publish the book?
Maybe because people want to know, why did Roe v. Wade create such a big, maybe because that's an important thing to women, including left and the right. So guess what, Republicans? You have to respect that and pay attention to it. Guess what, Democrats? You have to find out what the hell happened with this Anthony Fauci guy. So to me, the only point I'm making, I'll kind of turn it back over to you and then we can go to the next subject. The only thing I'm saying is, the future part, I'm with it. I agree. You have to sell the dream of the future where we're going. But the accountability part, if there's not really any law and order, then this whole thing about a guy like O.J. Simpson who got away, which, by the way, you're not liked by O.J. Simpson.
No, I'm aware of that.
But by the way, you know what that says? That's a compliment.
Well, you know, my dad always used to say you can tell someone. You can tell a lot about someone by their enemies, and you know the fact that O.J. Simpson is my enemy.
But what I'm saying to you is, I respect the fact that he doesn't like you because we wanted to know what happened. So there's a part of the accountability part that there's a lot of people that are saying, I just want to get to the bottom of it, see who was behind it.
Well, and this is the thing, you know, the COVID thing, you know, interests me.
Here's what's interesting. I don't recall exactly how this conversation goes, but from what I've gathered from the last segment that we've listened to, what Vinny is saying repeatedly, what PBD is saying, what they're all presenting Jeffrey Toobin with is, as Americans, we want to look to the future, but we see that the system does not hold its own accountable. If you are part of the system, you are protected from the consequences of your decisions. And as American citizens, as lay people, non-experts, we look at that and we say, unacceptable. We need accountability for mistakes that were made. There's an argument to be made that not only was COVID bioengineered in a lab, but that we paid for it. The US government taxpayer provided the funds through some cutouts that went to the lab that built the virus that killed millions and millions of people. Okay? There's an argument for that to be made. Will anyone be held accountable for those decisions? Doesn't look like it. And are we being unreasonable to ask for that accounting? Let's see where he takes it. Because again, we're operating from the perspective that he's a trained rhetorical tactician. He's a lawyer. He's a professional communicator. He's a mouthpiece on CNN. Where does he take that very clear message of, isn't it reasonable to want some accountability when mistakes are made?
For a specific reason. I mean, there is a active scientific debate about the ultimate source of COVID. Did it come from a lab? Did it come from an animal? An animal. And 100%. I'm just a guy who went to law school. I know fuck all about epidemiology. How could you possibly ask someone like me what the source of COVID was?
Oh, that's not what I'm asking.
No, but
in general.
But I'm saying.
This is something that experts love to do. If the conversation goes against them, they retreat back to their own relative lack of expertise. And they say, hey, listen, I told you, I'm just a layperson. It's completely unreasonable for you to ask me where COVID came from, to ask me to make an authoritative statement on where COVID came from. If he's either being dense, which is unlikely, because again, he's a skilled, trained, expert communicator, or he's being intentionally obtuse. And this will often be the case, where if you take someone who's put you in an uncomfortable place, again, can you agree with the principle that there should be accountability when mistakes are made? If you don't want to say that right out loud, then you redirect the conversation by going on the defensive and saying, hey, I don't have the expertise to do this. How dare you ask me to make this kind of expert conclusion?
But what I'm saying is we should ask Vinny the source of COVID. But
shut up,
that is a question that should be addressed in good faith by people who have some idea about how to determine that. I don't know the source of COVID.
Yeah,
these questions that become politicized, it seems ridiculous to me to have political debates about something that is a scientific question that people should address. And I'm agreeing that there should be investigations of all that stuff.
By the way, Brett Baer, did you see the interview with Trump?
Yes, I saw excerpts from it.
Did you think he did a good job?
All right, so it looks like we're shifting topics. We're going to cut it right there. I got to get to work, working graveyards this weekend, so yay me and my life decisions. Everyone, grateful for your time. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, good luck out there.